y'all for making it here on this Sunday afternoon. I truly appreciate y'all. Yeah, so my name is Zuri. Hold on, let me pull up my questions to make sure we're set. Yeah, so my name is Zuri. Like we said, I'm a programmer with the film festival. And today we're just going to have a discussion about music, memory, and its effect on social movements. We all understand music as a timekeeping kind of mechanism, but today we're going to get into the conversation of music as keeper of memory and keeper of social movements. It's my hope that at the end of this you come away with a sense of awe with how integral and pervasive music is in our lives. And yeah, so the panel structure, we're going to move from, the questions are going to move from the personal and into the political. And in between we'll have questions or time for audience questions. So without further ado, I'm going to pass my mic around, and we're going to, our panelists are going to introduce themselves. They're going to tell us what their pronouns are. They're also going to tell us a little bit about their film. Oh, you got it. All right, go ahead.
What's good, y'all? My name is GUAP 4000, preferably known as GUAP, just for short. I'm from Oakland, California. My pronouns are me. And my film is called Stoop Kid.
Hi, my name is Quallis. I am a co-editor for A Taste of Heaven. My pronouns are she, her. I reside in New York. Happy to be here.
My name is Marcus, they, them. I am the director-creator of Friday I'm in Love, a documentary about a club in Houston called Numbers. There's someone that's been there.
Hi, I'm Mirissa Neff. I'm the director of This Is National Wake. My pronouns are she, her. And yeah, I'm psyched to be here as well, so thank you.
A little side note, This Is National Wake won an award this morning, so please give it up for that amazing, well-deserved award. And yeah, so Guap and Shay, you didn't say about your film, so maybe you can tell the audience a little bit about your film to give them some clues about some of the questions you're going to be answering, some context. So Guap, just like real quick, tell us about your film.
My film is basically my origin story as an artist and a creative coming up in a biracial household in Oakland, California, and dealing with the problems that come with existing as I was born. And it's very anecdotal. I narrate the whole thing, and it's really personal.
A Taste of Heaven, the very long title, an Ecstatic song, and Gospel of Raymond Myles is about a teacher, mentor, choir director, and queer gospel singer who resides in New Orleans. And it basically chronicles his life, but also we get into topics about his struggles for acceptance in the Black church.
And then if you could tell us a little bit about your award-winning film.
Oh, yeah. No pressure. Yeah, This Is National Wake is a film about a band from South Africa, from apartheid-era South Africa, a multiracial punk band that existed from 1979 to 1982, when it was totally illegal for them to play together, live together, do anything together.
All right, so as promised, we're going to start out with personal questions. So for me, music has always been just part of my life. And I think my first memories of music is my mom listening to Haitian records and Michael Jackson only, right? The only English-speaking record she would listen to while she was cleaning on Saturday. And it was just in awe of how the music just moved her, and like she was just so engaged in what she was doing, and you know, just always had an image of that as a young person, you know, and that was where my love of music began. So I'm wondering for you, like, what was the first memories of your love of music? Like, how did you come to be a lover of music?
For me personally, it was like being from the Bay Area. Music is so embedded in our culture, how we speak, the words that we choose, the slang that comes forth, that then the rest of the country adapts into their profile. It is so like ingrained that everything I do spawned from music almost. The way that I dress, the way that I clean my house on Sundays because of my mama and my grandma.
What is it about music and cleaning?
Man, that shit, it get me done. Because if I don't got no music and I decide to just sit down for a couple seconds, you know, when you tell yourself that, I'm going to be stuck. When you got a song to sing along to, it's just better. And I think that that kind of connects to everything. Cooking. I've had conversations with my younger sister who we got a different type of bond because I raised her for a little bit when my mom was in jail. And that's something I talk about on the album. But even talking to her, I find it easier to bond with her through music and songs. When we have a similar song or I'm trying to get a point out and the song can help get me into that conversation, I've almost used it as a window, you know. And it always feels cool too to her. So music for me is kind of ingrained in everything. I think my earliest examples of music was honestly cartoon intros. Yeah.
What was your favorite cartoon intro?
Shit, the Pokemon one. Yeah, I want to be the very best. Like no one ever was my mantra, still is. But I remember listening to that like from an orchestral standpoint, like very early on. So it's something that I always was around and in.
What about you?
Can you repeat the question? No, I'm just kidding. No, music, my family is from Guyana, South America, so reggae is very prominent. So I grew up listening to a lot of reggae. My mom, you know, in the living room cleaning, blasting reggae, but when they came here, you know, she was also blasting Celine Dion, Whitney Houston, you know what I mean, like changing it up. And then as I got older, I like started to branch out and I wanted to listen to different types of music. So I listened to rock. I was definitely a goth kid in high school. And it's, you know, as an adult now, like I go back to my roots and I'm just like, I heavily listen to soca. Like I'm just, like it's one of my favorite things to work out to, clean to, cook to. So I mean, yeah, that's basically my upbringing.
Well, I had an older sister who listened to a lot of like alternative 80s that very much I was inspired by, and like just 90s like Lords of Acid and like rave, industrial dance music. But I started going to Numbers, the club that the film is about, when I was 15, like most people in Houston, like very young, 14, 15, sneaking in. And the music that the club is known for is alternative 80s music. Ministry, 9 Inch Nails, you know, The Cure, Susie and the Banshees. And so even though I didn't grow up in the 80s, I grew up in the early, you know, the 90s, early 2000s, it's that Friday nights at Numbers being exposed to all that music that made me feel like I was a teenager in the 80s, discovering all of this music that is amazing and, you know, just what a wonderful genre, you know, what a wonderful decade of music. And it's alive and well at Numbers, and you know, generations of people keep on finding it, and I was one of them. And it's pretty much all I listen to still is that era. So,
It's a solid era of music, actually. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question because I think for me, it's like, I don't know, couple-fold. Like, you know, there's the stuff my parents were listening to. My mom's from Barbados. My dad is, his heritage is, you know, Eastern European Jewish. And somehow she was the one listening to Simon and Garfunkel, and he was the one with the Kool and the Gang and stuff, so kind of crossed there. But also I had an older brother who introduced me to all kinds of stuff. He was 4 years, or he is 4 years older still. And I don't know, the first thing that came to mind when you asked the question was like the first concert I went to, I kind of tagged along with him to a musical youth concert, speaking of reggae, past the Dutchie on the left-hand side.
We get past the Dutchie,
yeah. But yeah, no, his tastes ran the gamut and totally influenced me, and definitely he had like a punk alternative moment that I tuned into, and I feel like, yeah, those older siblings can just like cue you into stuff that you would not know about at all, and that was amazing. Yeah.
So yeah, my older sister is definitely my go-to person. Well, not anymore. Now I've surpassed her, but in terms of like the new music stuff. But yeah, definitely. Remember, you know, it's probably aging me a little bit, but I remember when MTV dropped and we were trying to like recreate some of the dance moves and all of, you know, so like all of that was just like ingrained in me since because of my sister. But yeah, so I know Guap, you mentioned earlier about music being your everything, like being part of your identity, who you are, how you move, and very instrumental in helping you discover and construct your own identity. You know, I think that constructing your identity is in a way a mini movement, right? A personal intro, like a internal movement. And I'm wondering, you know, what artist or album helped you or you think was pivotal in helping you construct your identity or come to an understanding of yourself that was authentically you. Like for me, for instance, with Michelle Nicocello, right? Like just bald, you know, black woman with a bass guitar, singing, just like, you know, music that were like anti-patriarchal, right? Or against white supremacy, and just like, you know, the album Plantation Lullabies was just a pivotal album in my coming of age and understanding my identity as a queer black woman, you know. So I'm wondering for you, like what artist carries that honor or album?
Well, I mean, I hate to mention his name now in wake of recent events, but it was definitely Graduation, Kanye West. That's what led me to discover Late Registration and College Dropout and the rest of his bodies of work. But at that time, I think I was in the 9th or 10th grade, about to get kicked out of private school in San Francisco, and I just felt so defeated, like so unlistened to in the house, in the school, because I kind of played one of the like weird token black kid roles, kind of got pushed on me, and then I just was feeling like an outsider, like I liked all this cool shit, nobody understood it, and it was all just so plain. And that album came out, and I just remember feeling like, man, I don't know who this dude is, but he get everything that I'm trying to say. That's something that was instrumental in me learning how to love myself a little bit more, that album. His bravado, his cockiness, his confidence reverberated through like my cells and gave me a little bit more the boost that I needed, and I still have to this day, I could say. So that was something that was very instrumental for me.
Yeah, it's an interesting debate with Kanye because, you know, College Dropout was very instrumental in my college years as well. And it's just interesting to separate the art from the artist and to have that debate, you know, because his music is impactful, but the human being is harmful, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for sharing that. How about you? Or it doesn't have to be an album. It could just be like a song or an artist, or you know, if you feel like you want some more time to think about it, but just something that was like, you know, that's middle school. You know, that's a soundtrack in middle school. The angst, the turmoil of middle school.
Oh yeah, I was definitely an angsty teen. So I was listening to a lot of System of a Down, listening to Nirvana, listening to
Korn.
a little bit of corn, a little bit of corn, a little green beans. No, who was I listening to? System of a Down was definitely like something that was cathartic in high school. A very lonely kid, so like that was like, you know, go in your room, blast that. You know, it was definitely a safe space for me because I was like one of those kids that was to myself, but I was like also like a jock on the basketball team, so it was like a weird thing because like no one actually got it. Like they were like, she's like wearing like goth clothes, but she's like also like, you know, averaging 13 points a game. What's going on? So yeah, I mean, the heavy metal rock was definitely my space.
I have to confess too. I wore like the Jinko jeans and the Airwalks, you know. So yeah, I'm there with you. Hair with eyes. But yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Marcus.
Actually, my album of high school had nothing to do with the 80s. It was anything from La Tigra, Kathleen Hanna. I was absolutely madly obsessed, and then they came to Houston, and I was in high school, and it was amazing. But just the mixture of, having a real political, all their lyrics are highly political, but then it was dance music, it was like drum machines and like electro dance with like a message, punk rock meets disco. It was like, in high school, I just thought that was the best marriage of ideas. And Kathleen Hanna, of course, punk rock goddess, so that was very influential to me in high school.
Well, speaking of dating oneself, for me, high school, Tribe Called Quest.
Oh, yes.
Low End Theory,
Yeah.
that
Yes.
was it. And that lived, that album, and all their albums really lived with me for many years. And then somehow I drifted away from them, and recently they've come back into my life. And also the documentary about them from some years ago by Michael Rappaport. It's just so incredible to connect with them and feel like I connected. I mean, I used to go to their shows when I was in high school and stuff in New York, and I don't know, it just felt like they encapsulated like where I was in that moment, and just I don't know, that you could be hip hop, you could be alternative, you could be all these different things like in one. You didn't have to choose. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Right on. So a lot in all your films, space holds an important function in music, right? Yours, The Stoop, with you, Church, Marcus, your film, Numbers, the club space, and then National Wake, an apartment, right, with black and white people coming together, And, I've been thinking about just the importance of space and community and music being played there, right? There's this local queer monthly party called Ascendance that, just going there, being there with community and dancing and just not having to worry about anything has been so liberating for me, right? Coming once a month and getting drunk as hell and dancing, and then waking up sore the next day feeling like I've accomplished something, right? And then also with community. I'm wondering, for you, how did space function in your sense of self, your community gathering, your connection to your humanness, right? How does music in that space function for you? Does that make sense at all? Yeah. And if you want, I can clarify a little bit, but tell me about the Stoop, tell me about the church, right? Tell me about the club space, like these places of like exaltation and ecstasy, right? Where people come together and we're moving to the same beat. How does space kind of amplify that for you? Your sense of self, your power, your of self.
I definitely get you.
Okay.
Yeah. For me, the Stoop, the stairs in front of my house was my force field. Even though this is a Stoop in the middle of West Oakland, California, they are shooting across the street. I've watched my own friends lay down and not exist anymore from my Stoop. But at the same time, it never lost its power to me. My mother and my grandmother kept an open door. Anybody who needed help, anybody who needed a plate. Thanksgiving, we cooked too much, bring all that shit outside. That's kind of what I was raised around in the house. So when I started cultivating my own following and filling in blanks, it was a real community. When you see me kicking it on the Stoop, my homies know this is where we link up at. My uncle know. You want to check up on me? Go see if I'm over there. I used to come home and not even go inside. Just draw Dragon Ball Z and watch the sunset across the street. Smell the air, the oak trees. We had an apple and a cherry tree right there. They both got hit by lightning too, crazy. But it was everything for me. And then those relationships that I made with those people on my Stoop became lifetime bonds, who I call my brothers to this day, and we started making music together. So that's how it kind of grew into something that would lead to me having a whole career in this.
Oh, so your career started on the Stoop.
I mean, pretty much. We would freestyle there. We would freestyle at my brother Darian's house. Just rap. I before I could even afford speakers, my mom was scamming at the time, and one of her friends went in and stole this pink iHome radio from Urban Outfitters. And that's what I learned how to make beats on. I got an aux cord from headphones, soldered it to fit the jack.
Engineering too? Okay.
My grandpa was a carpenter. I used to like fuck with his tools and shit. But and that's why I learned to make beats on. I'd go on the stoop and practice. People get irritated in the house. That's why. Yeah. It was super instrumental to the development of my career talent, and pretty much everything else. My whole sense of community now. Even in my house now, my little brothers know when they want to get out the streets, they can come. And I'm a cook. I got pasta. Yeah.
Chicken adobo.
Yeah. Come on. Don't even get me started on the Filipino food. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
It's funny. I'm not religious at all, really, and so when Leo Sachs brought this project to my attention, you know, I did struggle with it for a bit as a queer Black woman. Like, the relationship with the church, like, my relationship with the church is pretty much non-existent. So I was like, this film was as the editor, this film was an opportunity to just kind of, like, live through Raymond Myles in a bit, like, in a way. Like, this was his sanctuary. This was a place where he felt comfortable, even though there were naysayers, there was, like, ridicule, and, but he, through all of that, which is crazy, in the 80s and 90s, he seemed so, like, before his time, like, to be able to stand in front of a bunch of people and just be like, you know, this is my space, and I'm occupying it, and I'm gonna sing, and I'm gonna preach my sermon, and I'm gonna, like, and you're gonna love me at the end of this. I found so much joy in, like watching the footage and just being part of that space with him as a queer, like, in solidarity, right? Like, so it's, my relationship to the church is, like, not the same as Raymond's, but but I'm so proud to have been a part of this film and being in the making of it too, because it gave me a lot of confidence, like, and I'm just like this, like, nerdy kid in the edit room all the time, you know, so it's, it gave me a lot of, like, confidence as a queer Black woman to be like, it's okay for the naysayers and the religion, like, it's always coming at you, and they may not ever understand, but, like, live your truth, you know, like, speak out loud, be loud, I mean, like, don't let the naysayers kind of, like, detract your goals and what brings you joy.
Well, I mean, this question is really at the heart of my film. I mean, I'm in the film. I'm telling who I was as a teenager and why numbers deeply impacted my life. So, you know, growing up queer, gender non-conforming in a suburb of Houston was hell on earth, as it is for a lot of people. So desperately wanting to find a place like Numbers, and the neighborhood that it exists in is also kind of, that's an important element too. Montrose is, for people that don't know, is kind of like Houston's nightlife, queer, artist hub. You know, it's where you want to be if you have any kind of, anything that, you know, anything that you're wanting to break away from, you know, conservative Texas, you want to be in Montrose. So discovering Numbers was heaven. And a lot of people that I talked to, from the generations that it's been open since 1978, people refer to it as a church, as a utopia, as heaven. It started in the gay rights movement of Houston in 1978. Literally, it was birthed when Houston had their Stonewall, so to speak, in 1978. So it holds that space. It was literally, people voted for, you know, important people in Houston to fight for gay rights there. There were political rallies, so there's that undercurrent at the club. But unless you've never been to Numbers, it's really, and I hope I capture it in the film, but nowhere in the world have I and so many people, like literally hundreds of people that I interviewed, everyone has the same feeling that, like, there is no space in no city where it is that mix of people all coexisting on that dance floor. No judgment. I mean, sure, people have judgment, and there's fights, it's a club, you know, there's gonna be like whatever. But for a little moment in time, there is this feeling that it's like a slice of heaven, and judgment is suspended and you feel, you know, a lot of people just feel really safe. I mean, really, it's like you can be next to like a group of vampire teenagers and like an old guy in a thong getting pulled around on a dog collar and a lawyer and a doctor and you know, all genders, all race, all, I mean, it's, which I guess is Houston. Houston's a very, very diverse city, so it is kind of emblematic of Houston. But yeah, never been to, I mean, I've been to cool clubs in New York, LA, nothing has that sense of like, it does not matter who or what you are at Numbers. And so that spirit, that message and philosophy of Numbers is how everyone should function, obviously, and so that is at the heart of the film.
Can I ask you a follow-up question?
Oh, sure.
How did you find Numbers? How did you end up there?
Well, I mean, I think growing up in Houston, most young people find it at some point, you know? But I found it, I was performing at Rocky Horror Picture Show, like really underage, like 14, I should not have been doing that. Braces, like I had no business doing that, like running around in lingerie. But it was some like older friends from Rocky who were like, oh, you'll get into Numbers just fine, you know, come out with us. And actually, my first concert was the Yeah Yeah Yeahs at Numbers. That was like my first time, and then like before they became like, you know, a household name. So they played at like a small club at Numbers. But then like a month later, they took me on a dance night, and it was heaven. I mean, it was like, you know, 15. You know, no other club in Houston would allow a 15-year-old in. So that's
your best. Cool.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, essentially, yeah, space plays such an integral role in my film as well. I'm not a part of it, but you know, the fact that, you know, this house existed and this person, Ivan, the main protagonist in my film, that he wanted to start a band, and he happened to live in this, I mean, it was a white house in a white neighborhood. It was a white communal house, but it was also a very liberal house. There were all these university students, and they wanted to connect with black folk, even though it was fucking illegal for them to do so. And this, you know, one black guy who was in the band, Mike Labisi, he kind of like didn't give a shit about the rules of apartheid. And he wandered into the house one day, and he and Ivan bonded, and they were both like, yeah, let's start a band. And they did. So, and Mike was like, hey, I know some amazing musicians from Soweto. Why didn't I bring them by? And again, totally illegal for them to do this. Like, but then he brought them by, and it became very clear that the only way that this project could survive was for them to move in, like immediately, and kind of live there surreptitiously, illegally, and, you know, by that didn't, like, you know, not go home as much, like they not go back to Soweto as much because the traveling back and forth was dangerous. The house started getting raided, like all these things happened, and also, you know, it makes me think, like, why did I do this project? Why was I drawn to this? And I mean, I think there are some echoes, even though I didn't experience that. And when I did see this footage of this band and their scene and what was going on there, I mean, I'm a kid of the 80s, so like I remember the boycotts of South Africa, and I remember that it, you know, what I was taught in grade school, it was just like everything was completely separate. Blacks and whites were completely separate, and there was no mixing whatsoever. And that, you know, in actuality, that wasn't at all possible because the white power class, like, they needed black folk to work for them, to, you know, keep their industry running, clean their houses, like deal with their gardens and stuff. So they wanted them nearby, but they didn't want them, you know, right next door. So, you know, I mean, just the echoes in my life are being the product of, you know, an interracial marriage, and, you know, the fact that that was illegal, like, till not that long before my parents got together. The kind of space that they carved out, you know, they weren't together for like all that long, but they created a space for us essentially in a white neighborhood in New York, in Manhattan. And, you know, we got like weird looks and like, I don't know, I mean, this is really weird. They bought a house with another couple, this like brownstone. It's the 70s, it was a lot cheaper than to do that. But Jackie O's mother like lived across the street. So it was like this blue blood neighborhood, but things were cheap in that moment, and it was easier to like kind of, to do that kind of thing. And she would like look at us from across, my mom, I mean, I don't remember this, but my mom told me she would look at us from across the street and be like, who are those people like living over there? Like, what is going on? Like, and so I don't know, it just kind of makes you wonder, like, do you choose projects or do they choose you? Like this, there are parallels there between my life and what happened with National Wake, so I don't know.
Thank you for those really amazing answers. Thank you. Now we're just gonna pivot a little bit. I mean, not so much pivot, but so something that music and film has in common, they're both storytelling mediums, right? And music is very powerful in that it can be a very personal storytelling medium, right? Because when you hear music, at least for me, when I was younger, I would hear a song, I would close my eyes, and I would literally see visuals or stories or things playing out in my mind. So I'm wondering, what inspired you to take, what about the music, right? The story of the music, the passion of the music, the animus, the energy of the music inspired you to take the leap to bring the story from the musical format into a visual storytelling format. As an editor, what I know editing can be really long. What compelled you to say, like, this is a story that needs to be told in a cinematic form? Yeah. You can popcorn too. Yeah, don't feel pressured. This is a very open conversation.
Repeat the question for me one more time.
What was in the music that inspired you to tell your story in film, in cinema, right? Because music still has a story already. You listen to it, like Slick Rick's children's story, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what brings someone to bring the lyrics and put visuals to it? What inspired you to do that?
I think, thank you for repeating that too. Yeah. ADHD beat me up. Yeah.
I also asked long-winded questions, sorry.
I think it's the beats. It started with as the artist making the music, it started with the instrumentals in the time where I made the album. It's called 1176, and it's about the house that I grew up in and not having it anymore. I lost it, victim to gentrification and redlining. And it was really me in the middle of quarantine, just depressed, dog. I was so fucking sad, and my dog died, I'm going through a breakup, I don't have this house anymore, I feel homeless. And I live in the hills in LA, and I'm still feeling homeless. So it was kind of me calling out, like searching the grasp for some type of home foundation, like I needed it, especially, knowing how I grew up, so much community. I just was yearning for that, and I feel like the beats pulled it out of me. I was talking about getting money and shit at first, and then I just got so emotional and so overwhelmed. All this honesty started pouring out, and as I was saying it, we for some songs in the studio as I was recording it, I feel the video. Like I see it vividly as I'm saying it. The lighting, like where it's at. And I feel like that's instrumental for making good music too when you paint that picture. And I can't say what about making music or specifically that calls to that, but it's just something that starts happening in the process. Through expression, I just see it, I see it. And I talked for hours on the phone with the team in production and getting out everything from like how things smelled to things that I didn't like. I hated anything that I could feel like we could bring forth visually. And it was all inspired just from that initial spark of me hearing a beat that I liked.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I think for Raymond's story, I think I would so as an editor, I just watch everything, right? And I'm just watching, I'm trying to put the story in chronological order before I trim it down, and I'm like, okay, a lot of what he's singing at different times in his career reflect his mood. So that also helped with the chronology of it. Like, at the, there's scenes where he's confronting the congregation, and he's just like, you know, everybody in white, everybody wearing white ain't pure. You know what I mean? He's like, he's about to, you know, tell everybody off, like, like, you know, like this is my space too. So and I see you judging me. So we use that as like kind of the bridge to him kind of like elevating to stardom, you know, performing at Jazz Fest, and the songs as he's excelling in his career, the songs get happier, right? And then we kind of use other music to the credit of the director, who is loves music. So I don't know why I'm up here and he's not up here talking about it, but he just gave me this list of songs, like gospel songs, R&B songs of that time, and it was just like, just have at it, just like whatever you feel, make that the score and the kind of like bed for that scene. So I think I just used where Raymond was in his feeling and in his career and in his mood to help me tell the story.
That's gang. That's gang.
Well, you know, Numbers spans from gay disco, new wave, punk rock, industrial, grunge, rock and roll. I mean, it covers such iconic moments of time in music. So visually, it made the most sense to make it a film, because 80% of the film is archival footage that I spent almost a decade hunting down across Texas. You know, and certainly the visual of the fashion from gay disco to new wave, I mean, that's such a leap, you know, visually. So that's a huge part of the film, is just seeing those iconic chapters of culture, style, fashion, but also the birth of the music video was 1980. You know, MTV literally created the music video, the idea of marrying weird experimental footage with a song, you know, or telling a story. Sometimes, you know, those weird 80s music videos make no sense. They're like almost surrealist films, you know? But that was the first time in history that happened, you know? Like, and so Numbers had video screens from the beginning on the dance floor playing these weird songs, or playing these weird videos that you couldn't see on TV, because not everyone had MTV in the 80s. It didn't reach Houston until the mid-80s. So it was the only place to go to see these really bizarre, you know, films. And the owner, who's no longer alive, made custom videos that still get played, and people think that like certain songs are the original band song, but it's the club that created these, you know, really weird videos. So the visual was always, you know,
Like built in.
it was easy for me. It wasn't easy finding it. It was like really hard, but it was easy to make that decision that like, oh, it has to be like a classic documentary with tons of archival footage.
Amazing archival footage, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, most, like all of y'all, or the three that use archival footage. Amazing archival footage. But yes,
Yeah, I mean, my process was very different. I started out, I mean, kind of the project started out in the audio realm, just because I did a public radio piece about, well, I found out about the band through this other documentary called Punk in Africa, and was just blown away, you know, by the music and the footage. The band that was a film about kind of the idiom of punk in Southern Africa. So National Wake featured for about, you know, 10, 15 minutes in that film. And like I say, blown away by the music, the footage. I reached out to Ivan and found out that he was living in LA, and went out and interviewed him for a radio piece. So that's kind of where it started. But I also found out that their album was about to be re-released later that year, and that was 2013. So I was like, okay, I want to like see where this goes. And initially I thought I was going to do this for a this like news magazine style show for PBS that I was working on at the time, and that it would just be this like 15-minute TV segment. And so I was not thinking in cinematic terms really at all at that time. Although I knew that this footage existed, I didn't know how much. I didn't know kind of the backstory of it, or like how much more there would be. It turns out that Ivan, his wife Nadine, she shot a bunch of the footage, and, you know, was part of the house and everything, and they maintained these reels, these Super 8 reels for, you know, 40 years, where everything was on, you know, it's like 3.5 inches, or 3.5 minutes on each reel. And they had digitized, I think, about an hour of the 3 hours total that they had. So, yeah, it was, I mean, it was a long process of getting there. First, I just imagined this being this TV segment and where I would kind of be interviewing people on camera and stuff, and it would just be like, hey, this is something cool that happened, check it out, you know. And as I got more and more into the story, it was like very clear that it required a different approach. It was a much more complicated story. I wanted to feature the music in, you know, a different way, and also, yeah, very influenced by MTV and just music videos. But what also one of the struggles was that the audio on the Super 8 reels, for the most part, like 90% of it is totally corrupted, corroded, like not there. You can kind of barely, if you really turn it up, sometimes you can make something out. They did have some recordings of their live shows that happened to sync up, but that was a struggle to kind of recreate those moments of the live shows and kind of get the audience immersed in those concerts and feel like you're there. And I feel like that's, you know, hugely integral to the film to make people feel like they are there. I took out talking heads at a certain point. That was like something that it took a long time to give myself permission to do so. Again, it was just to get people immersed in that moment, immersed in the music. And yeah, anyway, it was a long road, but I did not imagine it as, a documentary feature was the last thing on my mind when I started working on this. So it took years to get there, honestly.
I'm glad you evolved into it, you know. And what I really love about all your works is that the visual texture kind of matches the musical tone, right? So the era of like that Super 8 grittiness, the punk, and then the club, you know, era, like the VHS, and even with the church, right? That church video. It reminds me, I used to record my family's church, you know, sermons. So it's the same kind of like footage, and you're like more modern, you know, creamy texture that lends to your voice and to your lyrics. So it's just like it feels almost unimaginable to not have music and visuals together, but it's like so young, right? It's only 40 years old. So yeah, it's just really interesting. I wanted to mention that. Let's see. I think now we're gonna transition into the political, but before we do that, we can kick it to the audience for some questions, some personal questions, or any questions at all. Please don't be shy. Oh, okay. I hope that means I'm answering or the questions. Doesn't mean like, oh, we don't have your. All right, so let's move into the political then. So, Mirissa, in your film, This Is National Wake, remind me of the lead singer's name again? Ivan. Yeah, there was a point you mentioned that when we were on the dance floor, there was no apartheid, right? I wanted to get into this idea of like music as a charmer and a disarmer, right? As a way, like an element of bringing you into a space and having you lose yourself almost, right? What is that element or that spirit? You know, I know this feels like a lofty kind of question, but more so like, what is it about music that inspires like revolution, right? Even small revolutions like letting go and dancing in the middle of the floor by yourself, right? What do you think that kinetic force is that lends itself to galvanizing social movements and just like movements within itself?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think that quote that you picked up on, that like encapsulates so much about This Is National Wake. Yeah, when we were dancing, there was no apartheid like that. It's just it, really. Like, I mean, and you see that like in the footage. You see not only the band, like black and white on stage, rocking out, getting sweaty together, but on the dance floor, you see black and white folks, you know, dancing together, flirting with one another, doing like it. Just when I saw that footage for the first time, it was inconceivable to me that that actually happened. I was like, this can't be real. Like, this is unbelievable. And yeah, so what is it? I mean, I think that in that moment for those folks, they wanted to feel like they were a part of the rest of the world. Like and were willing to risk anything to get a taste of that. And I mean, I think that the music was, I mean, I don't know exactly, I mean, I'm super drawn to the music, and obviously they were, in terms of like saying exactly what it was. Like, I mean, the band did have political lyrics, but I don't think that that was it. I think it was just that they were doing something that was, I mean, when people talk about National Wake and try to describe like what their sound is, it's like things that come up are the Clash, Gang of Four. But at the same time, like, they were very influenced by reggae, what was going on, you know, in Jamaica. And, you know, people were like smuggling in stuff from outside of South Africa, and they were listening, even though it was like hard for them to get a hold of things. It was, you know, they were listening to the same things that their counterparts were in the US and the UK and stuff. And it's like, but they brought something new to it as well. They brought something very African to their music as well. So, I mean, I think that they were a part of like a conversation of what was happening musically in that particular moment. And I think that their fans were willing to do anything to be a part of it. So
It's like, which came first, the revolution or the music?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Anybody else wants to answer that?
I think it's a great question because it feels open-ended so much, but I've been trying to apply it to myself, like being from the Bay Area. We're a part of so many radical protests. You know, I started going to protests as a youth. I didn't even know what I was yelling about, you know, but you learn as you get to your third and fourth one. And I remember I took my little sister out to protest with for Oscar Grant when that happened with him at the train station in Oakland. And it's music in the streets. And it's crazy, the songs that people decide to play at these things are always reflective of whatever the emotion the artist was trying to portray when he was recording it. And it's crazy to see that then manifest in real life as something like a protest. So I think the relationship is almost symbiotic in nature. Like they need the other. Music provides an escape, and it also can provide affirmations that we can't get from other places. For example, I remember somebody was protesting about something last time I went to Oakland, and they were playing "We Gonna Be All Right." You know, that was the chant, just that one bar. You don't even need to know what the fuck the rest of the song was about. The power in that one statement, you know, can fuel a whole movement. It's almost like a butterfly effect when you're working with music. It's like being a social media influencer. You can't really guess what's gonna go viral. That's trying to bottle lightning, you know. But we are all affected when that lightning strikes, and I think that's the power in it.
Numbers is highly political because of Texas. You know, Numbers wouldn't exist anywhere else, I think. I think if Numbers existed in New York or San Francisco, it probably would have ended in the 80s. But because I think Texas is kind of another character of the film, and the struggles that people in Houston have fought for, I think that's made a space like Numbers vital, and people still need it. Certainly in the 70s, when Houston police was bashing gay people on a daily basis, known fact, everyone knows, like, if you were in Montrose as a trans or gay person, like, you probably were gonna get targeted by the police or some crazy person from, you know, a country town coming to beat up gay people. So the dance floor is literally, in many ways, especially then, not, you know, that obviously that has lowered much more than it was back then in Houston, but I mean, safe space, the definition of safe space, you know, literally, like, you know, you were safe at the club, but you maybe weren't safe on the corner of the club, you know? so that, all gets talked about in the film, but, I mean, I've experienced, I didn't obviously experience the horror of what Houston was really like, which was really the Wild West in the 70s and 80s. Like, good luck, being queer or whatever. So, certainly come a long way. And so I missed out on really the real scary moments of Houston, Texas history. But I have feelings being on the dance floor. I'm not religious, but I have feelings that are like, this is probably what euphoria feels like. Or like, if this sounds really dark, but there's times when I'm like, if a crazy person came in with a gun, like I feel so good right now. I feel so high, and like the music, the people, the friends, the nostalgic moments from, I'm good. If this is it, I'm good. I've never felt that anywhere else but that dance floor. So something about the music, the building, the neighborhood, the people. There's something magic, about music in a club. So.
I mean, I feel like I kind of jumped ahead a little earlier before, but no, the church is not the first place that anyone would think of, like a safe space for the LGBTQ community. But I think in A Taste of Heaven, I think again Raymond makes that safe space, and he's able to bridge that gap of like galvanizing the naysayers and galvanizing the congregation. Like, we have amazing footage of him preaching and people in the congregation just kind of like falling over and like, catching the Holy Spirit. And it's just like, one of the Raymond Myles singers basically said, he was afraid, but when he took the stage, like, you couldn't stop him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he was like, I'm gonna kill him. Like,
there was a part in there that was like, Raymond knew that the folks in the church didn't like him, and he was a visiting church, and he would start with some shade, right? With like some, and then like people would just be like, crossing their arms, and then you see the footage of people like uncrossing and like opening, and then at the end of that scene, people literally catching like the Holy Ghost, right, off this man that you just didn't like, right, like 5 minutes ago. Go ahead.
No. I mean, that's a perfect example of like what drew me to this film as someone who isn't in the church, who isn't super religious, like spiritual but not religious, and it's someone like Raymond that could take someone like me who's very anti-church and, bring me into that space and also feel like I'm a part of that community, and also, touch me in ways that like I wasn't a big gospel music fan before this, and like now I'm like every song in the film I love, so it's just amazing. Like, I don't know, I just had so much fun making this, and I hope that everyone gets to enjoy it and finds a gospel song that they like.
Music is almost like a cathartic space for movement, right? It's like a resting space for those, for people who, like activists, or those who are just, living their damn life, just interesting, just wanted to, mention that. So every social movement, I feel like, has a soundtrack or an artist associated with, like Bob Marley associated with the Rastafari movement, right? And the Pussy Riot being associated with the anti-Putin movement. Marvin Gaye, What's Going On, civil rights. Kendrick Lamar, We Gonna Be Alright, which is like modern. What like other, I don't know if this is, let me just ask a question. What do you think is like our modern day like soundtrack for protest, right? That's happening now, or social movement? Or what music do you think kind of organizes you in this kind of like crazy time, right? What organizes us? So we're thinking about music as a way, again, a cathartic space for social movement. With what's happening now, elections coming, or even what's happening in your personal life, what music or song do you feel like is a cathartic space for now, like, or helps you keep going, helps sustain you, right? Like for me, like Kendrick Lamar, like the last album I'm not too much of a fan of, don't hate me. But yeah, putting on Damn, by Kendrick Lamar, that, like, if I'm coming home and like I feel whatever, you know, that I'm feeling identity, and I put that on, it's gone for me, you know. What is that for you, if you have that?
There's an artist in LA named Kalen For Real. He's a younger dude. I came up with him. He has his own career and he's doing great things. He has a song called Going Through Things. And that was the outro of his album 222. I listened to that song specifically in the car with my little sister. Well, it's getting harder for us to bond because she's older. And this Father's Day was crazy because she told me Happy Father's Day. And it like blew me back. In our first conversation, we were playing that song. So just to mention that, yeah. But to also build off previous questions, I think Kendrick is a good study for the relationship between music and visual, because I don't even remember one music video from Good Kid, Mad City, but that shit plays in my head like a movie.
Yes, say it again.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that I think
A short film on an album.
yeah, exactly. I think that's what that made me think of.
Yeah, that's definitely Good Kid, Mad City, like front to back. It's just, I don't understand why it doesn't have a short film, but I also think that it shouldn't, right? Because it's more of like a personal film in your head, and I think that it probably would mess it up if it did. So I take that back. Anyway, go ahead.
I don't know. So I'm a very like, what's the name of that song? I love that song, but I couldn't tell you like artist's name. But there is a song Kendrick Lamar has out right now about his relationship with his father, or a father-son relationship, and like that song is like just a beautiful song, like just like for a black man to basically be talking like very openly and outwardly about his daddy issues, and you know this strength that black men and black women are supposed to basically like, you know, put on to face the world and all of these issues, and like not be able to actually like openly talk about these things. Like I feel like Kendrick is such a role model for that conversation, and I don't know the name of the song, but I definitely I heard it like on my way here, and I was like, this is why Kendrick is the best. Like,
Do you have an answer?
I know, I don't
I'm still
really-
kind of,
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm thinking about that.
I don't have much of an answer, or a song that I have a little bit of an answer.
Or do you have a song that you play before like a moment that just pumps you up, like rah rah rah, like gets you going, and then you go into the battle?
I don't know if I have that exactly, but I would say that I mean, in part because of the being on the festival circuit with the film. I DJ'd for a long time. When I lived in San Francisco, when I lived in the Bay.
You need to lead with that. Lead with that.
Yeah.
What's your DJ name?
Oh man.
Nah, you gotta say it now. You gotta say it now.
You brought it up.
Okay. It's retired now. Now I'm just going by DJ Mirissa. You know, Mirissa Neff. It was DJ Felina.
DJ Felina. Okay.
Yeah.
Might have
Okay. DJ Felina.
But yeah, I mean, I have started DJing a little bit, you know, doing some after parties with the film and stuff. And generally my sets are veering in like a, you know, vintage African disco direction. But just, I don't know, I think that simple act of, I don't know, feeling that part of myself again, and especially what we've, you know, the last couple of years, everything's just been shut down. Like, there's been no, I moved to the country, like, I've just been in a space where I'm not dancing, like, I'm not moving my body in a certain way, and I feel like I'm starting to come back to that and starting to experience that I mean, even last night, like, that was just incredible being at that party, the party for the film fest, and I feel like that, for me, in some ways feels like a radical thing, and just involving music in my life in that way, and just kind of fighting off the dystopia that's kind of surrounding us right now, and trying to feel hope in that way, at least in the small ways.
I mean, could you imagine if there wasn't music and we were still going through what we're going through now? I don't know. Like,
no, I can't.
if we didn't have Frank Ocean, like Frank Ocean got me through the pandemic. Like literally, I think my neighbors were like really mad at me because I kept playing Frank Ocean like all day. Like, who is this emo cancer next door just playing Frank Ocean? But yeah. Sorry.
First of all, you was blessing them.
Yeah, exactly. Frank Ocean is a gift. But yeah, Marcus, did you?
Yeah, I mean, like Sinead O'Connor's albums from the 80s are like still so relevant. I was listening to that a lot during the pandemic and just thinking, wow, like what a pioneer, really. I mean, ahead of her time. Danceable, yet the lyrics are, you know, so relevant, everything she said. So
She was like anti-pope, right? Or at least there was like a protest with that, right?
and
So
she was
very
one of the first to say like they're raping kids,
yeah.
you know, and they crucified her, but you know now, you know, yeah. So and there's a wonderful documentary about her that just came out, and her son just died, and yeah, just a tragic story. But that wasn't a very good answer.
That was great. You know, inform your identity or construct your identity. How does space serve to disrupt oppressive narratives? You like, and I'll let you just go with that because I feel like if I say a lot, I confuse people. Shut up.
Say more. Say more.
Say more?
Yes, say more.
Okay. Yeah, like how does the church form, right? And how does the club form as a space for political activation, right? For movements to take off. Yeah, and I think that once that happens, that invariably disrupts oppressive narratives, right? So, I mean, tell me more about these spaces, like even the Stoop spaces, right? It feels like, I mean, in some spaces where they're building, you know, housing for people without porches, it feels violent, right?
Yeah,
Because that's,
definitely.
yeah, it's an integral part. Instead of building these like high-rise, you know, kind of like public housing situations, I mean, they're doing that instead of building homes for people with porches that they can sit and gather in, especially in the South. It's really important, right? But I want you to tell me more about the spaces in your film or your experiences that you felt, you know, how did that disrupt the narrative of oppressive structures in your life, specifically?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, cool. So talking more is good.
For me, really, it was gentrification was something that I was struggling with, dealing with, and for me to flesh out this idea of being a Stoop Kid and what it means to literally hop off the porch and then, you know, face the world. It was very instrumental, for real, in the way that I looked and acted for everything that I wanted changed or wanted better. You know, that was like my foundation. Like, man, I do love this. This is home, but these are all the fucking things wrong with home. So leaving here, I have this idea of what I can strive for from starting off in that space. And I feel like in terms of movements, it was an internal movement in my family because they seen the things that I was doing after leaving the Stoop. They seen the things that I was trying to bring back when we still had the house before we lost it, and my efforts, and I think it was an inspiration because when I came back, I still sat on them stairs. You know, I think the internal revolution for us was basically, man, one of us found a way to get some money. You know, let's go get it. It was a change like that to spark something, and I was missing all that. So to bring it back to the thing about what I wanted to call action to was let people know about the gentrification that's going on in the Bay, put that out there, and then expressing that helped me also get through it. While we shot the movie, I had never seen this shit in my life. I'm in West Oakland, California, in front of my old house. It's really hard for me to be there because it's not my house anymore. But I still feel like it's my house, and we're shooting a movie there. I'm trying to save face. But I'm like been in the corner almost crying every 3 hours. Man, I have never seen a white couple matching Nike suits just jog through the middle of the street. They went straight past it. I got like 90 people on set. We got big production. It's people, you know, cameras and grip, and they just jogged straight through the shit.
My face.
I was so taken aback, but also angry. Man, that shit made me so mad. I never got to jog like that. Ever. But seeing that while I was shooting that and then expressing these feelings only made me want to further the narrative when we wrote this out, when I talk about it as I talk about it now, so people could see how something like gentrification affects you from the macro to the micro. And I think that's the movement that I hope to start, but just also to add to, that came from my space.
Thank you.
Yeah, and while the church wasn't necessarily like a space for people of the community, the LGBTQ community, I think, you know, regardless of what Raymond went through, he still showed up. You know what I mean? He still showed up, and he made sure that he wasn't gonna let anyone else kind of control what he did for his students, for his choir. He made sure that he was still a role model, regardless of any vitriol or any, like, you know, like naysayers around him. He made sure that in that space he was still gonna, you know, do what his mom taught him. You know, preach the gospel, sing, mentor. I think it's important to continue to push through even in these negative spaces.
Yeah, Raymond Myles, they commanded and controlled the space, like really took ownership of that. And I felt like that was, like, that's just gutsy, right? To know, to be invited to a church and to know the congregation doesn't like you, and to get up there and to be like, you know, you're gonna like me. You're gonna like me. And really just taking up space and using space as a tool.
And doing it, you know, with a smile on his face.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
like, even if you didn't, made a face at him when he walked in, you were hugging him at the very end of the service. You know what I mean? And he invited that hug. Like, he wasn't a person that was gonna hold that against you. And I think, you know, he's such a positive role model, like, to showing, like, you know, you can still remain positive in a very negative space.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when I started the investigation of the history of Numbers, I had no idea. Well, I didn't know that it was a gay disco, you know, so that was news. So with that, I had no idea that they were, I mentioned this kind of earlier, but they were using the space for lots of political rallies during Houston's Stonewall era. Larry Bonarise, who's he's like a big New Orleans, I think he's still here. He's from New Orleans, but lived in Houston and was a huge member of the gay political caucus, like very active. Ray Hill, I mean, these like iconic activists in Houston that would parallel to like a Harvey Milk or something, you know, but in Houston, they were doing all kinds of things at Numbers with voting and, you know, rallying and gathering. So that was all wonderful, delicious news that I had, you know, absolutely no idea that. But it made, you know, I mean, historically, you know, especially in the gay community, you know, the nightclub is at the center of so much of, you know, gay life, not just for dancing and hooking up and expressing sexuality and drinking, but for holding space and congregating and sharing ideas and rallying. So that was wonderful news to discover that it functioned in that way too. Yeah, it's a short answer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I mean, I think that I already spoke to, you know, National Wake spaces and things, but just in hearing everyone, and especially what GUAP was saying about, you know, the kind of personal liberation that can happen. I think that for me, the I don't know, for some reason, the main thing that comes to mind is this club that I used to go to in San Francisco that doesn't exist anymore, but the Elbow Room in the Mission. And I ended up there in my early 20s and fell into this like Brazilian music scene there. And there were these women there just dancing samba, and I didn't know how to do it at all. And I went there for like 9 months, and I loved the music too, and you know, fell for the singer of the band, of course, and, you know, from afar, but was just kind of watching from the back for like almost a year. I would just go and just watch, and then suddenly like that, just watching them like infected me, and like I started to be able to do that as well. So there was definitely, I mean, I, you know, grew up mostly, you know, with my mom and my grandmother. You know, it's very kind of like proper like West Indian household, and like kind of feeling your body in that way was not the thing. Expressing yourself in that way was not the thing, and but just by going there and in that safe space, I feel like that changed me majorly. I mean, I went there every Tuesday for like almost 15 years.
Wow.
Like that was a huge part of my life for a long time. So I don't know, that's what came to mind. Yeah.
I think I saw a hand go up.
Hi, I'm Leo Sachs. I directed
Oh,
the Raymond Myles
hey,
documentary.
hey, how you doing?
Hi.
You want to come in and join us?
No, but I thank you for the invitation. No, you guys are doing fine without me. I just wanted to make a connection to Raymond's sense of community, because when New Orleans was the Wild West with the crack epidemic in the 80s and 90s, you know, some of the victims were his students, because he taught in the public schools, and I think he felt such a sense of obligation and despair to sing at the funerals. He sang at countless funerals. I mean, this was at a time when billboards were screaming, "Thou shalt not kill," everywhere in New Orleans in the 90s. And I think his sense of obligation to the city, because you know, a murderous culture, babies killing babies, really. It's so paradoxical that this man would defy logic and keep a gun in his car for his own personal safety, and he would be murdered by that by that gun. Anyway, I just wanted to reinforce his own sense of commitment to the culture and singing at all of these funerals. It parallels the themes that are running forth on this wonderful panel. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it definitely gives his just bravado and passion some dimensionality. So thank you for that. I have one last question. So going back to just like political movements and government, right? Like talking about like Pussy Riot and like Putin banning them and them becoming more popular. I think back in the 80s and the 90s, NWA, you know, being like really powerful, and the government's like, no, we don't want anybody listening to that. And I think that's when the advisory came on albums, right? Because of NWA. And just like, you know, other artists, well, why do you think government hates music so much? Like, you know, political structures, the powers that be, why do you think they hate on music so much and target the leaders of bands?
I think it's fundamental for them. What the government is, in essence, represents this unachievable amount of order and structure and formalities, you know, that they have to use to then govern all of these people in these countries, right? So if that's what they are, in essence, right, in black and white, and we're sitting here on a panel talking about how powerful music is and the things that it can do in euphoria, the things that it can inspire, the way it can make you feel. There's about two questions that we got cornered, because you can't even really bottle the magic that goes hand in hand with visuals and music. So I think that that's scary for any power at B to deal with something uncontrollable. And I think we can name countless artists with countless movements outside of rap personally, rock, soul, country especially, you know. Those
Elvis
things
moved his hips and they lost their mind.
like those things pull things out of you that can inspire anything. Like I said, they playing those type of music at protests. You think the government fucks with that? I doubt it. You know, so I think just inherently by nature for what a governing body is supposed to be, they wouldn't like that.
You know? Yeah? Oh, okay.
I agree 100% with GUAP.
You know, it's crazy to me, just like how music just pisses them off, you know? It's just like, what's wrong with you, you know? And like, even with, Michael Jackson, which is like, okay, debatable, you know? I don't know if he's canceled yet. It's another conversation. But yeah, just like people going crazy. I remember like just being young and again, like watching MTV and like, you know, recreating Paula Abdul's Cold Hearted Snake video. My mom whooped my ass. She caught me doing that. She walked in there. She's like, "What are you doing?" Right? And it's just dancing, right? But just like authority, right? Authority figure and their fear of what music does to you, right? Just you lose your mind. I think it's like a temporary insanity in a way, or a temporary state. Like I don't want to say insanity because it's not probably the right word, but just in a temporal state of trance, right? In which any and all things are possible, even the destruction of what they thought they instilled in you, right? So yeah, just wanted to like touch on that.
I also wanted to say something kind of building off what he said that kind of inspired me. I think it's also integral that we mention the pain behind music and the grief in making it. How he described being sad singing at those funerals. There's a bittersweet feeling that I get as an artist, telling my truth, being honest, crying in the booth, saying you know like people hear those songs. I just left South Africa, by the way. I was in Cape Town in Johannesburg, and I had never had this many people like come up to me crying, talking about songs that I don't even get to perform in America. That is also a reason why he was singing in those churches, you know, why people go to the club and why they started to heal from the pain that people could put in music too is also something that I'm sure has inspired. Absol, TDE rapper, just dropped a new music video and it's beautiful.
Okay.
I think it speaks to the pain and honesty that I'm trying to portray in whatever statement this is, but I think that we have to give praise to that too, because healing is a big part of church, it's a big part of the club, it's a big part of music, and that's also a part of the magic that we're having trouble describing.
I don't think you're having trouble. I think y'all hitting the magic on the head, right? I mean, can we get a clap for that? Yeah, Marcus.
No, it was a short point when you brought up the Paula Abdul. I was just thinking about also music inspiring what authority and schools and families don't like, which is the visual. Again, you know, thinking of the 80s, Boy George and Pete Burns, who were pushing gender, androgyny in an era where, in ways I guess it was embraced in the mainstream, in ways that it feels like it isn't sometimes now. Like there was some weird ass shit in the 80s with gender and just non-binary was totally in the 80s, just there was no language for it. But anyways, just thinking about, you know, artists that really pushed that, and then of course the youth that it inspired, and the parents and the principals and the whatever that hated it, that, you know, that young boys were running around in, you know, Boy George outfits. So yeah, just thinking about, you know, not only the music, but like what the music comes with that infuriates people still, you know.
And even I'm sorry, Marissa, you want to say? I was saying, even beyond authority, it's just kind of what word am I looking for? Like things are just as they are, like traditionally. Like, for instance, shameless plug, I DP'd for a Lizzo doc, and one thing that Lizzo goes through in her life is just the hate, right? Just like the pushback of just representing yourself through the music. And it's not even that, it's like governments or authority, it's like fans, people who are pushing back against that, and just like the emotion that music inspires when you show up authentically, when the music is authentic, because it's so dangerous in that form. But yeah, if y'all are not busy on Thanksgiving, HBO Max, check it out. It's gonna drop. But yeah, I think for me, I'm gonna turn it to the audience for questions. I'm gonna let y'all close it out. I'm gonna shut up and stop talking and pass the mic to somebody else, or if you don't need it.
Don't need it, but I'm really concerned if the Republicans take control of Congress, they're going to start investigations into the George Floyd protests. And I think that is, right there is emblematic of all the power of, the kind of the last gasp of the white power structure. And music galvanizes social protest, and it's going to be, it's going to be it's going to be a really transparent window into race and class and gender and white rage and supremacy and their utter fear of how America is changing from a white majority to an ethnically diverse majority.
Yeah, we're definitely in some interesting times, and next week we'll be in another world, literally. I don't know what world that would look like, but I think now we're going to need music more than ever to kind of get us through some of these setbacks and just, lack of a better word, fuck shit. Okay, if you are from the South and you're Black, you know what I'm talking about. Fuck shit. But any other questions from the crowd? Yep.
I just had a little bit of a comment about sort of as you were trying to describe, like the magic of why music seems to have such a crucial role in movements. And I really believe that art in general is almost always a rehearsal for change. Like either as a personal change or a larger movement change.
I should have given you the mic. Say that again, please.
So art is a rehearsal for change. And if we think, because we can articulate it. Like, I get really upset with artists who are like, I can't talk about what I do, it's somehow, and we can articulate. When we work on our craft, we know what we're doing. And what we're doing is creating in music a standard A, B, B, A structure, which is about change. We repeat that several times, and then we change it, and we come back to it, and it's completely new. If we're telling a story in a typical, like even Hollywood movie form, we're going from the inciting incident to the conflict to the rising action to the point where the protagonist is moves from the outside challenge to the inside challenge and transforms. Like dance is about creating a pattern and then interrupting the pattern. Painting is about creating a pattern and interrupting the pattern. And so all we are doing, I think, as artists, over and over and over again, is rehearsing for how we figure out how to change from one spot to the next. And so we know more than anybody else how to transform from the world we're in now to the world we're going to need in order to survive. And I think that people get the most upset about that, not necessarily because it creates chaos, but because it is a path forward that is actually structured. Like, we can show you how to do this. And I think now is the moment where we need to seize that power and articulate what we're doing even more succinctly and more concretely, and to not mystify it, to have it be something that we're teaching the younger people coming behind us. And that, like, we have that power. It's not magic, it's actual ability to change. And I just want to applaud each and every one of you for the
Yes,
amazing
please, yes.
films that exemplify that so well. Just this whole festival is doing that just perfectly.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for those words. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, that really hit, like, art being kind of like the beta testing of a movement. Yeah, that really hit. I'm gonna steal that, okay? You okay with that? Okay.
You might hear that in the song.
Okay. Any other questions as we wrap up?
Wait, was it art as a rehearsal for change?
Yeah.
T-shirts.
Yeah. See, I suggest you get a lawyer.
Who's a producer? Somebody help me out.
Any other questions out there? We're feeling good. We're feeling satiated in our minds. Awesome. Well, I would like to thank actually, no, I have one last question. If we have not seen your film, where can we check it out, and what's next for you?
Tight. You can stream mine with the what is it? Digital cinema?
Virtual cinema.
Virtual cinema.
Yeah.
I was struggling with the word. On the virtual cinema with NOFF and on Amazon Prime. Just type in Stoop Kid or my name, GUAP, and it should come up.
And what's next for you, Bob?
I'm working on an album. It's called Handsome. I learned how to rap better, and things are going great.
That's like the sign out of the century. Drops mic.
Yes, A Taste of Heaven premiered last night, but you can also find it on virtual cinema or virtual screenings. And what's next for me is more editing. I love to do it, so I'm just gonna keep doing that. So hit me up for your next film, please.
Bless your heart, editors. I mean, y'all have unsung heroes of the film. Like, jeez.
Right now, you got the strongest background.
I mean, I try to edit. I mean, I edit, but I don't edit. Like 2 minutes, but like long term, just like engaging, putting the story together, and weaving it like the ultimate architect. So thank you for that, because that was beautifully woven together film.
Thank you.
Well, you can see it tonight, Friday I'm in Love at 9 o'clock at the Broad. And then after that, virtually. What's next? This is my first film. I don't know that I'm gonna make another. I mean, I might,
Wait.
but huh?
We're not gonna make it.
Well, yeah, but there's nothing on the horizon. So,
Don't tell us that.
Never a music doc ever again. It took years of my life off. No, I'm kidding. I'm a clothing designer by like my life, so I'm working on a clothing line that
Oh, nice.
is inspired by fetish nightclub wear. So
Wait, hold on. What is it called?
it's called Desaad.
Desaad. All right, what can we find?
I'm usually like able to say, yeah, I made this. Tonight, my premiere look, I made it. This I did not make. So. But it's coming in the next year.
And would like the audience be able to kind of get some of that clothes?
Well,
or?
yeah.
Tell them where though.
Well, Instagram, Marquis Desaad. We can talk in the lobby.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm just like trying to.
I don't have like a.
I'm trying to promote you.
So sweet. I'm working on it.
Yeah, I love your style. So yeah, awesome.
All right, this is National Wake. It screened last night, but it's available through virtual cinema, and will be, streaming, available through streaming sometime next year. TBD, working all that out. But yeah, next project, I am just starting to work on a project with the guys who did my VFX. I love this outfit out of London called Capture, and it's a film about reggae and how it went from Jamaica, like literally, physically, how reggae records like initially went from Jamaica to the UK and then the world.
So I'm excited to see how that comes out. Yeah. Well, thank y'all for coming to this talk. I hope you're walking away with a new sense of awe and wonder about how pervasive music is. And please give our panelists another round of applause. They deserve it. Thank you. And that's all she wrote. Thank you for your words. Thank you.